Well, today I will try to install the swivel seat brackets for the 2025 US model ID.Buzz van. These swivels are intended to allow the front captain's chairs to be swiveled around so that they can face backwards. I could not find any other instructions on how to install these online, so I will be attempting to do this myself. First, I'm going to show you what's in these boxes, which are from Scopema, although they're labeled RIB. I'm not sure if those are different names for the same company or not. Inside the box you'll find some hardware, some pretty vague instructions. So I'll show you in case anyone needs that. And the brackets themselves. There's a separate bracket assembly for the driver's and passenger side, and they are different because of the positioning of the levers, I believe, to release the swivel. So here I had to look at different hardware options to get into these seat nuts. And after a few different tries, the triple secure M10, which is a little bit larger than a Torx T50, appears to be the right size to get these seat bolts unscrewed. What I'm trying to do now is get this panel off below the driver's seat, which is apparently where the battery is, the 12-volt battery is stored. There's these little tabs you have to lift, which I'm trying to do carefully so as not to break them. I'm going to work these out and see if I can get this panel removed to access the 12-volt battery. So these are only held in with friction. You simply pull them from this top portion and just pull it right out. The two clips removed, this pulled out from the front of the seat. What I'm wondering now is, once I disconnect this battery, which I'll show you, it's under the driver's seat. Once I disconnect that terminal, I'm not going to be able to move the seat forward and back anymore. So I need to put the seat where I want it for removal before I disconnect that terminal. And since I need to unscrew the bolts, I'm actually going to loosen these bolts before I work on disconnecting the battery and before I disconnect all the airbag and other connectors. So I did actually decide to remove these because I'm not going to even be able to hand remove them once the seat is slid back, which is what I'm going to do next. It does appear there's some maybe white Loctite. When I reinstall hardware, I'm planning to use some Loctite thread locker as well, just for security's sake. So now I've removed each of these bolts, and I'm going to center the seat. See if I can access the battery when it's centered, because I do need to reach that terminal. Come to think of it, I'm going to move the seat forward. Get as much access to that battery terminal as possible. Now, I've got pretty good access there. I'm going to grab a wrench and loosen that battery terminal next. So it's a 10mm nut, and you loosen that and you can lift up the negative terminal. This is viewing the underside of the driver's seat from behind. Pretty easy as long as you know what you're looking at. But again, the seat is all the way forward, which I think it needs to be. So now I'm going to try to look for those connectors to disconnect the seat. Okay, so I found the connectors that are connecting the seat to the car. I see two of them here, and then there's a little zip tie which holds them to the frame of the seat. I'm going to snip that and see if I can disconnect these. Alright, correction. You don't need to snip the zip tie. You can actually pull this little clip off. It just pulls right off the metal. Okay, these connectors weren't too bad to remove. The yellow one had a little red piece you had to pull out, and then all you do is push up on this little tab there push up on that and then pull the connectors out one at a time. The seat should be fully disconnected from the car now. All right, so what I did is I lifted the seat out, put a moving blanket on the folded seat, and I can actually see what's going on underneath the seat. It's the driver's seat. So now I'm going to grab the bracket instructions and see where we go next. All right, let's see what's in the little hardware bag here. Looks like some nice stainless hardware. Some of nylock nuts. So I'm going to check which ones need thread locker versus just using the nylock. Go from there. Okay, so I'm now test fitting the driver's side bracket, and I'm realizing that accessing the battery terminal with this bracket in place might not even be possible. So what I might have to do is connect the 12-volt battery to the car again and go from there. And airbags make me nervous. If this plastic cover would come off. No, it's the heat vents. Well, I think I need to reconnect the 12-volt battery here. I'm going to do a little reading and make sure I'm not missing something. Come back. All right, well, I'm going to attempt to complete this installation and see if I can reconnect that negative terminal through this hole and with the seat connected to it at the very end. I predict that'll be the hardest part of the entire installation. So as you see here, I've got this low profile nut, which is the included hardware, not the factory hardware. And it's got a low profile head, and it's got a less deep total length. And I presume that's because the bracket itself is also lower profile. So I'm going to use the included hardware. I'm going to put some thread locker on these, and it does indicate 35 Newton meters torque. So I'm going to get those pretty snug, especially on the attachment to car bolts. All right, I got these 4 bolts on the corners cinched down. You can see that this will rotate. I did confirm that. The seat will eventually be attached to this, and if you kind of click it, it will lock in a forward position. Now my next step is actually over on the seat, which I've removed from the car because I remembered that I have to trim this tab and this bolt pin in order for it to sit, the seat to sit flush on the top part of the swiveling adapter. So next, I'm going to take this angle grinder and lop these off. Wish me luck. Well, that was painful and also very, very hot. But the pins have now been removed. And give us a little time to cool down. But this should allow the seat to sit flush on the swivels. So from a sequencing standpoint now, I can't put this seat back on until I'm ready to reconnect the 12 volt. So what I'm going to do now is actually catch up the passenger side to what I've done on the driver's side. Quick hint, once your battery's disconnected, you can't open your sliding doors. So what I'm going to do now is actually complete, I think, the driver's side seat. I have to think about this more, but definitely close or open your doors before you start the project. All right, now I reconnected the battery just long enough to open the passenger sliding door and to move the seat forward once I had loosened and removed the forward bolts. And I'm going to remove these rear bolts on the passenger side. Well, we do still need to remove this fabric cover, which I'm hopeful I can do without connecting the battery yet again. So I'm going to pop these pins and remove the fabric cover like I did on the driver's side. Well, that's kind of neat. Under the passenger seat, you can see down to the it be the battery pack? I don't know, but there's just a hole in the floor here. So if you need to smuggle stuff, put it down there. Got another set of airbag and heated seat connectors I'm gonna disconnect now. So now grab my handy dandy oval bore approved PPE and cut the other 2 pins from the passenger side. Fun. That was fun. All right, now I'm gonna grab the other bracket. Just pretty straightforward now that I've seen how the driver's side went in. Grab the bracket, grab the hardware, grab some thread locker, and I'm gonna pop this one on like I did on the driver's side. All right, so I positioned the seat back in the vehicle after the pins were cut. And then I'm reaching down and by feel actually connecting the airbag on the left, relatively speaking, left from this view, and the power connector on the right. And you can actually do that by feel. There is an additional safety red tab, which I'm not putting back on because I can't really reach it, and I don't think it's necessary. The other thing that you're not reinstalling here is that fabric mat. I think this tray pretty much does the trick, although maybe I'll stuff it down there to try to plug that hole. Very strange that they left that open. Okay, here's where things start to get a little dicey. I've got both seats unbolted on top of the attached swivel seats, but now I need to reattach the 12-volt battery to the vehicle. So what I'm going to do is tilt this unbolted driver's seat back enough that I can access the hole and reconnect the 12-volt. So I'm going to have to reconnect the battery while the seats are unbolted. I can't see any way around that, but they are fully connected again into the connectors. So I think I'll be okay. All right, extensions are your friends. So now I need to get this and tighten that 12-volt terminal, which has already been reconnected. I'm going to do that now. All right, now both seats are atop the adapters. The 12 volts reconnected and the airbag connectors are reconnected. So now I need to twist each of the seats and install the hardware to attach the seat to the swivel base. And I can see from here, well, we'll see how this goes. It's not the clearest path. All right, this is passenger side. If you're like me, the seats are already fully forward. Now, the power is reconnected, so I could slide them back at any time. But as you can see, with the seats fully forward, the holes are pretty accessible to get these bolts in. So I'm actually gonna fully tighten these back bolts and then move the seat back and then do the fronts. Okay, something I just realized as I was rereading the instructions is it does say these washers are only to be used if the seats are mechanically, i.e. manually adjustable. And I'm wondering if there's a clearance issue. So do not do what I almost did and put the washer in. Only use the bolt with the nylon locking nut. All right, so there's some skill in sequencing. Loosely put the bolts in before you start tightening them. And then you do need to rotate slightly to get access. So it's gonna take some back and forth to get these in, then tighten them with 2 wrenches. Well guys, here's the big reveal. Did it work? Did the seats swivel? They do. So this is interesting. I suppose you could put your feet up in the back seats. And here I am sitting in the passenger front seat. So the trim does, there's a little bit of a catch with the lever arm on some of the trim. Just lift it a little bit, move it. The driver's seat, I will say, is much more difficult to get to rotate. And that's because of the steering wheel. So you gotta move the steering wheel all the way forward and then I left it loose and let it sort of be knocked around and then put the armrest down so it goes under the steering wheel. That's important. And then, yeah, it takes a little bit of finagling, but ultimately the seats do face straight backward and you can adjust them. So now it's in position. I can check how much clearance I have and then I can move it back a little bit more. So yeah, pretty neat. I can sort of see why it's not a factory option, just because the clearances are so tight on the driver's steering wheel. But I don't know. I think this will be a nice feature for hanging out, camping, letting the kids play around, things like that. So I don't know. That's it. I would say the install took me about 2 hours, just under. And you could save time by not making some of the same mistakes I made. But overall, I don't know, I'm satisfied so far. I haven't really had a chance to use it out in the field, but there it is. If you got any questions, post them and I'll try to answer them, and I'll update as I've maybe lived with this a little bit longer.